Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. My name is Chris, the High Guy Jacobs, and today we're taking a look at our last installment of the Heroes Deep Dive, where today we're going to look at the leaders, the overalls, and some of the mixed matchings that you're going to see out in the field, and things that you might question and go, why would they play with that, or how they were going to make these heroes actually work in the field. Because you'll notice that outside of the game, it's not just about infantry, riders, and ranged. There are the leaders that have some actual benefits and some tools to them, though you don't see them nearly as often. They are still massively influential, and we'll go through why. Now, this one will be a little bit of a longer video, so go ahead and first hit the like button, subscribe, and don't forget to fill out that notification bell so that you get any new drops whenever we get this. But we're going to cut through these heroes as quick as we can and keep them all together because they all kind of fit within the same parameters. The overall heroes are going to be used for gathering, so we'll cut through them quickly. Then you've got your zombie hunters. There's a couple of those. There's a couple that will work in the field, specifically in rallies, specifically in garrison, and specifically for buffing. So it's kind of a little bit of everything. That's why we can't break it up into separate videos. So I hope you watch through the entire thing. And obviously in the comments below of these heroes that we go through, tell me which one's your favorite and why. Okay? So, first and foremost, we're going to go through the overall heroes very quickly. We're going to touch on the gathering heroes that they have, the legendary gathering heroes at least. I will do a later video on how to set up your gathering lines if you haven't already checked out my past ones. But obviously, since we're into a new situation where we have some new heroes and we got new armaments and stuff like that, that work for gathering, there's a ton of that kind of stuff that we're going to dive into in a little bit later, especially in the new year. But up until now, we're just going to go through the legendary ones, okay? You've got Maxine. She's a totally free legendary hero that you'll be able to get entirely for free and awaken entirely for free, but you will learn very, very quickly has one specific purpose. You do not attack Antipede with her. You do not attack farms with her. You do not take her out to attack anything. She is used for farming. That is it. That is all you are going to do with her. You are going to use her to farm. If you look at her ability, she's only dealing 7,000 damage. Yes, she is reducing the squad's rage, but it's only by 50. Yes, she is reducing the target squad's damage, but it's only by 13%, and it only lasts for 2 seconds. And most of her skills are actually based around gathering. So once we understand that she's providing 36% farming food and oil, gathering speed, and 24% to wood and steel, and also increasing your load by 25%, you can see that she's entirely focused on gathering. So here's the biggest advice. Use her for gathering only. Okay? Yes, she does provide attack and defense when she's gathering, but that's only when she's gathering. And of course, the second skill, there's no other additions except gathering. So again, I've said this before, I'll say it again, do not use her in the field for anything else except gathering. And I'll go through the gathering in another video to give you where she does best, and obviously some of those pairings to make it the most balanced, okay? Some of the benefits to having her as a gathering, obviously the gathering speed is huge. The additional resources is huge, an additional 15% if you think about that. That's an additional 180,000 on a full node, and that's just her without including her talents. And once you have her talented out, where you're obviously getting an additional gathering speed, you're getting an additional 7.5%. It basically gets to a situation here, let me just show you, where in some of your gathering reports that you'll see, if we look at some of these gathering reports, we're ending up here, for example, 33%, you know, about 30% of what we're bringing, of what we're farming comes back as additional free resources. Here it's about 30%, right? About 25%, something like that. So it's right around that same type of average. And as long as we're bringing in an additional 30% every time, on a lot of these that'll stack, obviously those additional resources are important. Okay, not only do we have additional resources that are coming back here when she's completed, but she also provides a bonus reward. Now, I don't have any in my inventory right now, but there's basically rewards based on the size of node that you complete, so the level of node that you complete. And if you complete a level, you know, if I believe it's a 5 or a 6 node, you get a legendary chest from her, and that can include everything from gems to relocators to survivor things. I mean, it's a list of everything, resources, speed ups, you name it. So, and it's all totally free just for getting her awakened and then using her to farm like crazy. So Maxine, use her to farm. That's where she's going to stay. Next, we're going to talk about Sarah Gentle Earth Vandermeer. Now, just like her, she's a brand new legendary hero that came out. You can get her entirely for free and awaken her entirely for free. Her shards are available in one of the events that they bring back pretty regularly. But again, she is a hero that you're going to use specifically for gathering. Now, she has a little bit more flexibility in the field in regards to having a lot of movement speed in the field, so you can use her to gather in dangerous territory, for example. And as long as you're watching your farms, you have the capability to escape, and get a lot of speed to do so. And you'll obviously see why when we go through her kit. Her first skill, yes, we're dealing 7,500 damage here. It is called Logging Timber. You are dealing, and then increasing engine squad defense by 30%. But again, 7,500 damage is not enough, and 30% for 3 seconds is not enough. Yes, it's for your engines only. But this is where we're starting to see why she's out here. Again, you've got your increasing gathering speed by 24%, with food and wood gathering an additional 15%. So you're getting 24% on steel and oil, and you're getting 39% on food and wood. Okay? Next, we have this one. When gathering, reduces the ratio of heavily wounded troops by 10.5% or by 15% when fully leveled. And then when leaving the gathering point, increases engine squad travel speed by 60% for 10 seconds. So this is one of those benefits about having her to be able to farm within dangerous areas. If you use her to node jump, for example, that means that additional 60% is going to be on all times. Which means that it gives her the capability of escaping pretty easily. And then having this additional 15% less wounded troops just means that you're going to be spending less to heal them, which is obviously a benefit, but only there when gathering. Okay, off-road patrol here, we're going to increase the squad load by 40% and engine travel speed by 30%. So coming out of a node, you're going to get a 90% speed buff, or 60% speed buff, which is going to give you basically a 90% on top, or 90% total of what she's got, which makes you very, very quick. Lastly, when she is awakened, obviously we're going to increase that gathering speed a little bit more. We're going from 30 to 48%, and then you also get an additional 10% of additional resources when you're gathering. So anytime you're getting additional resources is a benefit, but of course you're only ever going to use Sarah again for gathering. Okay, so that's going to cover our two major legendary gathering heroes. Next, we're going to talk about our zombie hunting heroes, and then we're going to get into our field, because there's a little bit of play between the two of them, which is going to give us a little bit of flexibility. The first one we're going to talk about is Jaden, and I'm going to give you a hint, guys. Don't ever put Jaden in your field, and don't fight with him. Don't do anything. He's not good. He does not do well. He doesn't have the talent trees. He doesn't have the damage. Don't use him for anything other than zombie hunting. As you'll see, he has the zombie hunting talent tree, and that is exactly how I've statted him out to fight zombies. And that's pretty much it. I don't use him in the battle. I don't use him anywhere else except to hunt zombies and help boost up my other heroes, okay? You will get him for free. You can level him up for free. You can upgrade him all the way up for free and awaken him. But please do me a favor. Even though he's a leader and even though he's got the attack tree, do not use him in battle. Period, period, period. He's used for zombie hunting and zombie hunting only. Okay? First and foremost, we're talking about a 9,600 damage. 9,600 damage to one target. At the same time, reduces defense of the attack targets by 30%, so it does increase for additional damage, which is nice. But here's one of the big kickers, right? So if he's a vice general, so if he's your co-leader, for example, his damage is cut in half, and his damage at 9,600 is already too low to actually do anything. Next, we have an increased damage dealt to zombies by 25%. When attacking a zombie, there's a 10% chance to heal lightly wounded troops by 1,500. So, again, when you have skills that are specific to a certain thing, whether it's zombie hunting or siege or rally or garrison, things like that, you want to make sure that you're trying to use those heroes specifically in that case. In Jaden's case, because his ability is also focused towards zombies, and there's a lot of better heroes, we don't include him in any of the other situations. You won't see him fighting anywhere. He's used specifically for zombies. Okay. Next, we've got when using a basic attack, there's a 20% chance to reduce skill damage taken by 25%, which is great. And in theory, this is a fantastic type of skill to have. But it's also going to work against zombies. It's just not going to work in the field very often. It's not going to be something you want to rely on. Again, much better heroes to deal with that can help you reducing skill damage or reducing damage taken and things like that. And again, here, increasing the squad attack by 12% is pittance. It's absolutely nothing. This is like first generation when it didn't matter. When you now have heroes that are doing 49%, 12% doesn't do anything. Even though it is squad attack, it's not specific to any type. It's still not very good. Good for hunting zombies, nothing for else. Now, once you have him awakened, it does change his damage numbers a little bit. So it does take it from 8,000 and a 4,000 reduction to 96 and 4,800. And it also increases this reduction of the defense. But again, this doesn't matter because you're only doing it against zombies, so who cares? Jaden gets relegated to zombie hunting, and don't ever put him anywhere else. Moving on now, we're going to talk about Martin. Now, Martin, I have also statted here for zombie hunting. He does have some other play, though. He does have some other capabilities. It's not specifically for zombies. You can use him, for example, if you have nobody else. You can use him in garrison alongside a Raigaro, for example, or a Tom, something, or like a Thunder. If you don't if you're really hurting for troops. If you have nothing better, he works decently well as a bonus healer, and obviously you'll see why when we go through his kit. But he's not someone you're going to be leading rallies with. He's not someone you're going to be leading garrisons with. If you have nobody better, he's not a bad call. But again, like in my situation, I've got him statted just for zombie hunting. And that's about it. That's as far as he's going to go. So he gets relegated to that. Though, again, if you're free to play or small spending and you have nobody better, he does have some capabilities. Okay? First and foremost, he is only dealing 7,000 damage with his rage skill at 1,000, but he is healing lightly wounded troops 40% of the damage dealt. So just off the rip, we're talking about 3,000 damage, 3,000 healing factor, which is pretty strong. Once we start to go into it, we start to see how that's going to start to compound, because now he increases the healing effects by 35%. So 35% on 35 or on 3,000 is an additional 1,000. So now we're talking about a 4,000 healing factor, which is pretty heavy. We're going to talk a little bit more about how he provides bonus experience. So the experience gained by the squad leader and assistant goes up by 50%, and the HP goes up by 12. So the 12% HP is good. The squad experience gain is good, but that's only for running zombies. Okay. Lastly, when healing is received, squad's defense goes up by 23% for 3 seconds, once every 6 seconds. And that's going up to 45%. So whenever he heals, right, and he takes that heal, and you can put this on with any healer, this is going to be triggered. Once every 6 seconds, you're going to have that. So half the time, you have an increased 45% squad defense, which is pretty good, which puts him in the capability of working with someone like Tom, working with someone like Thunder. If you need him in a garrison position, a tanky position, there is some synergy there. But obviously, he's not going to be your number one pick. Raigaro, like a Thunder Tom, is going to be better than Thunder Martin. Even Thunder Raigaro might be better. But he's someone that you'll get for free. I haven't spent anything to awaken him, so you'll be able to awaken him for free from the police station and such. So you don't have to put too much into it. And of course, lastly, once you do have him awakens, his damage goes up a little bit. So now we're talking 8,400, and you're healing for 45% of the damage dealt instead of 40%. So now you're looking at closer to 4,000 plus like 5,500 plus whatever healing you get from Tom and whoever you have him paired with. So it starts to stack synergistically with the amount of healing that he provides. But remember, healing in this game is not necessarily the best one. We kind of want shields instead, so it's kind of a give and take. Again, that's why I've relegated him to zombie hunting. That's why I've got him on my zombie hunting lines. Next, we're going to talk about Lee. Let's talk about Lee Sung-won. Lee Sung-won is an interesting case. He is a zombie hunter, although he does have the leader faction, or the leader talent tree. I do have him talented entirely for zombie hunting. That doesn't mean that I can't use him in as a co-lead position, and as we read through his kit, you'll see why. There is still playability for having him on the field, even in field battle. This is why I'm going to mention him here, because he has a decent debuff. I believe it's a debuff. Let's just make sure that I'm right. Yeah, so here when we talk about his first skill, right? So he's the type of situation where you're gonna, like, for me, for example, I use him as a zombie hunter, okay, to help with my other stuff. So I've got him talented that way. But if I use him on the battlefield with like a Thunder, for example, like a Thunder Lee, specifically designed as a line that's going to be debuffing the opposing line. You want to, there's some tankability there. So you'll put him out with like a Tom Lee or a Bianca Lee or a Marco Lee or like any of those types of situations, where you have like a really kind of defensive situation where you're not focusing on doing damage. You're focusing more on doing debuffing and stuff like that. I mean, you could pair him with someone that wants to do some damage too. There's nothing wrong with pairing him with like a Lewis, for example, and getting like a Lewis Lee out there, though that's probably not going to survive as much as you'd like it to. But there's lots of options like that, okay? That's why we kind of mentioned Lee. He does have some playability, and I still see him on the field even today, doing some debuffing and stuff like that, especially if you don't have Bianca, or if you don't have Marco, or if you don't have some of those other ones that are used, Miyamoto, stuff like that, okay? So Lee Sung-won, his first skill, Brutal Blow, pitches a fast spinning fastball, dealing damage to 5 targets at a total of 3,800. So it's not a lot of damage individually, but in a group, we're talking about 19,000 damage, which by itself is a a decent amount to be sprung up. But this is kind of the other benefit, because he's now going to reduce the target's attack, defense, and HP by 30%, which is a huge debuff to your opponent. So not only are you smacking 5 targets for decent damage, it's not like fantastic, it's not like it's focused on one, but now you're reducing target's attack. So up to those 5 targets, all of them, a reduction of up to 30%. So there's reasons why you're going to put him in the field. Now, we do have a skill that's specific to zombies. Increasing squad damage dealt to zombies heals some lightly wounded units after killing zombies. So you're going to deal an additional 25% of damage to zombies and heal for 3,800. But that's, again, only when dealing with zombies. We do have this bonus here, this Koshian Star. When leading 2 or more troop types, increases squad attack by 24%. So one way to take advantage of this, just make sure that in your march that you have, if it is like a Thunder Lewis or a Thunder Lee, for example, that you are using, 99% is rider or ranged, pardon me, and then make sure you throw in 1,000 riders or something like that, 1,000 ranged, preferably 1,000 riders, just to kind of make sure that you're getting this additional attack. Okay. And then lastly here, reduces counter damage taken by 14% and increases rally capacity by 12%. So, obviously this is, a benefit, and used to be a benefit back in the day when, when he was a little bit older, or when he was newer and the game was older. So the reduction in counter damage is nice at 14%. But the rally capacity by 12% is really only good when he's in a rally. And I mean, although you can send out more troops and stuff like that, it's give and take. Yeah, you're going to send out, not that it's only available in rallies, but I mean, you're looking at an additional 12% of your troops. So yes, you're bringing them out there, but your entire goal is not to deal damage. It's eventually for those ones to either die or get ignored. So it's give and take. It's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. It's just kind of an outdated skill. Lastly, once he is awakened, his debuff gets increased and his damage factor goes up. So now he's looking at dealing 23,000 damage spread up over 5 targets, and then reducing those targets by 35%, which is a decent amount. So there's still some play into having him debuff in the field. Okay, who would you pair him with? Obviously, like I said, I have him talented for zombie hunting. So who would I pair him with? Well, I've given you a couple hints already. Someone who's going to be super tanky, someone like a Thunder out in the field. Yes, you're going to be, again, the purpose is not to deal the damage. The purpose is to debuff the squads, right? Put him with someone like Bianca, someone like Marco, someone like, there's lots of other options of targets that you want out on the field that are going to be debuffing and buffing anyways. So be buffing your squads and debuffing the opponents. So any of those choices are going to be good ones to go with. Don't put him in your main damage line if you don't have to. He's obviously relegated to a line that's going to be focused specifically on debuffing the enemy squads. Okay. At least that's my opinion of where Lee is. Some people think he's better, some people think he's worse, but that's kind of where I place him. Now, from those zombie hunting, and then, because like I said, I have those 3 statted for zombie hunting, and then this one, and then, like I said, Lee has a little bit of flex into the field. We're going to talk about 2 heroes, which in my opinion need absolute work to be manageable, to be usable. They used to be monsters in the game, and now we don't see them at all because they've been replaced by many others. But we're still going to talk about them anyways and give you a little bit of a handle on who they're going to be used for, especially if you have nobody else. Remember, there's a lot of variety in these heroes because you might not have them all, and if you don't have all the heroes, you have to work with what you have. Sometimes it's, you've really got 2 options. You've either got to save in hopes that you end up getting the heroes, or use the resources that you have on the heroes that you have and do the best that you can. Yes, you can't get the resources that you use in heroes back, But like I said, a lot of it can be drawn down to what you're more usable or what you're more, efficient or able to do in your alliance. Anyways, let's talk about Peter and let's talk about Hank. Peter first, because he's at the top of the list here on my paperwork. And unfortunately, my brain just wants to go one at a time. So Peter ᴺᴼᴿᴺ is a leader. He's a siege hero, but he comes with the attack talent tree, which isn't really great. And don't copy this. Don't copy this here at all. I was just playing with some stuff to see if that actually did anything, which it doesn't. In my opinion, the strategy is probably the one that you're going to... Well, don't follow the strategy. That's not really good. It's going to be kind of a mixture of everything. Don't ask me for that right now because I haven't even looked at him. He's so old, he doesn't get used pretty much ever, okay? Now, granted, he is going to be coming in here for 3 seconds, giving you an 80% chance to deal 4,500 damage. But here's the problem. I mean, right off the rip, we're talking about an 80% chance, so it's not even guaranteed damage, which means theoretically you could do 0 damage on your skill, which sucks. You know what I mean? Like, that sucks. So, just off the rip, it's kind of just a negative skill to be working with. Even though it is a bonus 4,500 damage, which if you think about it, teeters on 14,500, which is great in theory, or 13,500, pardon me, which is great in theory, but that's if it hits every single time, and then there's only an 80% chance. Next, we've got increasing the squad capacity by 12% and rally capacity by 12%. So, this is where we're going to see some difference. I was actually correct. This one here is only when he's in rallies, and he's not going to be in rallies very often, so you're not going to really use it for that. But he's going to do this for your squad capacity as well, which is fantastic. This one allows you to bring more in the field, and then more in the rallies as well. Right, more of your own troops in the rallies, which is great. But again, if he's not in the rally, which is really the only place that he actually works, you're not really getting the bonus of it, and you're losing out on other stat abilities. Remember, this was back in a time when the stats weren't nearly as atrocious as they are now. Like I've mentioned before, when you have when you have Ethan, for example, giving 49% to attack, HP, and defense, and then we're talking about how he's providing a 12% squad capacity boost, they're just not on the same level. You know what I mean? Granted, he does provide an additional 24% if you're leading 2 or more troops. So again, the problem is that you have to lead him with more than 1 troop, and the meta just doesn't play well to that. If you look throughout pretty much all of it, garrisons are single troop types, rallies are single troop types. It's not very often that you see these multi-troop type benefits, and especially having benefit on the field. Plus, it's only 24%, so it's kind of lackluster. Now we've got Drunken Rage increasing the squad defense by 30%, or no, increasing by squad defense by 15% during sieges. Also increases damage dealt to lookout towers by 30%. Again, it's just substandard, subpar, 15% defense only during siege. Doesn't make it very efficient, especially to use him anywhere else. And then even after he is awakened, yes, he gets that additional 20%, so it is guaranteed, but there's no additional damage factor. So he goes from basically what could be dealing only, 9,000 damage to guaranteed 13,500, which isn't really a huge change when you're looking, again, some of these heroes doing 15,000 damage guaranteed plus additional stuff. So Peter's just taking a seat out to the back, and unless they provide him with a decent skin to revamp him a little bit, provide some attacks and buffs and things like that, you can probably pretty much never put anything into Peter again. Same with Hank. Now, Hank is a little bit of a different story because he does bring the skills tree, so theoretically he could be used a little bit better since the skills tree does bring a lot more in regards to rage regeneration and skills. But even with that, the damage numbers just aren't there anymore for him. He's not nearly as good as he was. He's an old hero as well. Okay, he's one of the original ones. Yeah, needless to say, he's just outdated. So first and foremost, he's going to deal direct damage at a factor of 4,500 to a target and cause burn damage for the next 5 seconds at a factor of 9,000. If you're working to garrison squads, you're going to be dealing an additional 3,500 for 5 seconds. So that's good. Don't get me wrong, it's decent damage. You're going to deal 4,500 up front, and then 3,500 up for 5 seconds afterwards to garrison squad. So only while he's rallying, right? Other than that, you're only getting an extra 4,500, which means he's only doing 9,000 damage on the field, and then doing 20,000 damage in siege. Again, not bad, good damage numbers, right? But that's only when he's in siege, when he's in a rally against a target. Gunfire Symphony increases damage dealt to lookout towers by 30% during siege. Also increases the amount of resources raided by 10%. Fantastic, but totally moot. All of this stuff is totally moot. Because it really doesn't matter. Like, the damage dealt to the lookout tower is irrelevant. And the raided resources is irrelevant. Because that just basically means when you're attacking someone's shelter, that's not when you're garrisoning or when you're attacking another watchtower or something like that. Squad's basic attacks have a 10% chance to deal bonus damage at 3,200% during siege. Again, so now we have 2 that are specific during siege. Okay, and 1 specific to raiding, resources, raiding shelters. Lastly, increasing squad capacity by 12% and rally capacity by 12%. So again, if you put them together, if you put Peter and Hank together, yes, you're going to get a large size rally, and this is kind of how it was a benefit before. You'd have, you'd send a 2.5 million rally, and that was enough just with the troops to matter. But now that we've got the amount of skill damage that we're doing and stuff like that, this is just it's just not important. Lastly, is new, once you have him awakened, his basic attacks have a 10% chance to reduce target's damage by 8% and defense by 20%. Now, this is pretty good, but it's only to your individual targets that you're dealing to, so you're not going to use him in the field, which is exactly why you would use him in rallies, and that's where he used to be. But now when you have Julia and Bard, and you've got Chasey and Felix, and you've got Stella and Bodala and things like that, these heroes just don't cut it. So unfortunately, Hank gets relegated again. Yes, he's a leader. He's just fallen off the wagon, and unfortunately, none of his explosives will bring him back. Now, we've got 3 last heroes to talk about. These last 3 are really going to be the only kind of leader heroes that you'll be using, at least in my opinion, the 3 that have the most relevance. And that's because one of them is my favorites, or my second favorite hero, pardon me, so there's always going to be a place in my heart for him. And then 2 of the other ones are actual ones that you'll inevitably use if you can acquire them. It seems right now that they are quite hard to acquire, so if you can acquire them, you will want them. And then I will say acquire one more time because it's a weird word to say. So first and foremost, let's talk about my favorite. Second favorite, sorry. My second favorite hero in the game is the one and only, where did I put him? Master Jin. Now, Master Jin is a special hero because you only have one way to acquire him, and that's going to be up in the VIP section. And depending on your account age and things like that is going to depend on where you get them. I obviously haven't purchased the Catherine fragments because I don't think Catherine is worth it. But I will be buying the Master Jin fragments because still to this day, Master Jin still has relevance. Especially in the lower brackets and things like that. And in the lower brackets, the newer accounts, he's much cheaper to get. And then once we go through his skills, you'll see why that's the case. Now, are you going to lead with Master Jin? No, you'll use him as a co-leader. And we'll give you some ideas on people to run lines with him. But as we go through his skills, you'll see exactly why, even to this day, he has some relevance, even if it's not as impactful as, say, the others. Okay, so his first skill, no, he's not doing any additional damage, but he is increasing the squad's attack and a defense by 45%, which is huge, and gains an additional 20 rage points from each basic attack, lasting 5 seconds. So, and if you think about it, you're typically getting your rage skill off, especially if you have them with heroes that have the rage skill, the rage talent tree. You're going to be getting your rage skill off typically once every 5 to 6 seconds already, which means that this is almost consistent. It's almost a consistent attack and defense buff, and then additional rage regeneration, which means that you're getting more skills off more active, which means that you're having that attack and defense buff stacked more often. Okay. Next, we have Harmony's Fist, where we're taking a reduces squad's damage taken by 7.5%, with a 10% chance of healing when damage is taken at a factor of 1500. So we're going to reduce the squad's damage taken by 7.5% by flat. And if you think of that with an increase of defense at 45%, that makes your squads pretty tanky already. But then we have this additional healing factor that's going to be triggered once every 6 seconds at a factor of 1500. Okay? So makes him pretty tanky, and 7.5% is nothing to gawk at. It's still pretty good because it's a flat damage reduction. Now we've got increasing the rally squad capacity, or the rally capacity, by 15%. Also increases damage dealt by squad by 11% during siege. A flat damage increase is great. Flat damage decrease is great. Increasing that rally squad capacity by 15% means that you're going to be bringing an additional 15% more troops, right? So already you're bringing 2.3 million troops, which is already a huge advantage. So even if he's not bringing additional damage, he is bringing additional weight in the sense of and a lot of these stats that he's bringing out. And then we do have a flat 18% attack and defense. Now, again, it's only 18% to attack and defense. It is less than before. But that's exactly why he's falling out in regards to, his position. He's not nearly as good as he was. He used to be the bee's knees. Like, everybody wanted him. Everybody used him. He was part of the main rallies kind of all the time. You'd see Peter Jin, things like that. If you had Sven Jin, things like that were all over the place. That was kind of key at the time. So there's lots of benefits. Yes, it's only 18%, but you're still getting a combined 36% stats. Okay. Now, once you have him awakened, this increases here, which is going to make it a little bit more potent. Now you're going to be looking at a 55% squad attack and defense, gaining 25 rage points for each basic attack, lasting 5 seconds. So in that time, you're going to regenerate 125 rage. You're going to have that stat on there, and you're hopefully going to trigger it again so that you'll have that attack and defense consistent. So you can see how this guy is still pretty good, and even today, you can still see him played. There are lines like Bella Jin, for example, will do a lot of damage, still be decently tanky. Sven Jin is still a decent line to run, is really tanky and does good damage as a rider line. You can put Jin pretty much in a lot of different sieges and have him work decently well in regards to that. Okay, so whether he's... So whether he's paired on the field or paired in a siege, there is still some capabilities because he does provide a lot of that tank. And if you think about this, this is flat. There's no need for him to be in a siege for him to have that. Same with a lot of these. It's not like he has to be in a siege, right? It's only this one where he's increasing the damage dealt by 11%, where you're getting that flat one, is that during siege. But the rest is pretty flat, so you can use him pretty much anywhere else and still get a lot of those benefits. So lots of flexibility in Master Jin. Do I see him in the field a lot? Not necessarily, because there's not really any buffs or debuffs that he's providing to other opponents. But in sieges, he does still provide a lot of tank, a lot of sustainability, and a lot of extra troops. So a lot of extra capabilities to refill rallies, refill garrisons, or not garrisons, but refill rallies and stuff like that. So that's why we mention him here. Again, he is falling out, unfortunately, but that's just the nature of the game as they introduce newer heroes. Newer heroes, pardon me, like the next two we're going to go through. These will be the last two that we're going to touch in on, and that'll wrap it up for us going through our leaders and overall heroes. And these are the two that you should be looking for. These are, in my opinion, probably arguably S-class heroes by themselves if we were to go with any kind of rating, just because they do so well in a lot of different avenues. And they do so well, they kind of... carry a lot of main things. Granted, they're, where they're used is fairly specific, but what they bring to the table in those avenues is pretty fantastic. So if we look at Bianca Drake first, Bianca Drake is the Scarlet Queen. Yes, she's bringing the support talent tree, so chances are you're going to put her as a co-leader instead of a leader. But in situations like this, you'll understand why. So increases the attack and defense for you and nearby allies by 38%, lasting 4 seconds, and instantly restoring 30 rage to them, or 60 rage to them, affecting up to 3 squads. So not only are we providing 60 rage to our allies, we're also boosting their stats by 38%, lasting 4 seconds. So again, pretty consistent. We should be having this type of thing active pretty often for the attack and defense. And then obviously that rage regeneration is nice too. Next, we've got an increase of 24% squad defense and 20% travel speed. And this is flat travel speed. So this is for any troop types, which means that there's a real benefit to put her, especially in things like Bounty Ground, for example. If you're just looking for some faster troops or troops with faster movement speed, she is one that you can use. And then a 24% increase on defense that's flat is pretty substantial. Okay. Next, we've got an increase of 20% attack and then increasing basic attack damage by 20% if the remaining squad size is less than 50%. So while she's in the field, again, 20%. So we're talking 24% defense, 20% attack, plus an additional 38% attack and defense here, right? You can see why she plays really well in the field doing buffing for your opponents or for your allies, pardon me. Movement speed so you can get around. Attack and defense for sustainability, additional damage once they're hurting. And then finally, every 10 seconds grants a shield at a factor of 2,800 to you and nearby allies. Affects up to 3 squads. So now she's putting out almost 9,000 shield factor, right, to you and nearby allies, to you and 2 others. So not only are we providing attack and defense and rage, but now we're providing a shield. So there's a very specific reason why she works really well in the field and why she gets targeted heavily in the field as well. Because once you see a Bianca out there, you know that she's doing a lot to buff her allies. And then when you have her awaken, she gets even scarier because now we're not talking about 38. We're jumping to 42% additional attack and defense, but we're affecting up to 5 squads. So if you think about it, that's 300 rage that we're handing out to our allies, which is huge for regeneration. Okay, so having her in the field with someone like a Marco, right? Marco Bianca or a Thunder Bianca or anything along those lines that's going to give her some sustainability, allow her to be on the field a lot longer, dispersing those buffs and heals. You could, heck, there's even an avenue where you could say putting her with Lee is fine because Lee is going to debuff and Bianca's going to buff. So there's lots of avenues to kind of work with both, right? Depending on what you want to do in the field. But know that she has an absolute place. She's a superstar. If you can get her, get her. She is usable, especially even now. Okay. Now, lastly, let's talk about our man, Victor Blackwood, who is, in my mind, the best garrison hero in the game. He is kind of ideal if you're looking for a shelter garrison or multi-troop garrison, or if you're looking for a little bit more capability to just have more of your alliance use mixed troop garrisons and things like that. Because Victor has so much flexibility in where you can use him, and he does so much damage that he just works in garrison in anywhere you want to put him. Okay, so first off, let's go over and we'll figure exactly why. So first and foremost, deals damage to the target at a factor of 12,500 if garrisoning increases this skill damage by 15%. So an additional 15% on top of 12,500. We're talking, pardon me, an additional 1,500, 16, 1750. So already we're talking about 1,400 damage, right? And that's just his damage, 1,400 damage flat, okay? Increases squad zone attack by 17% and increases HP by 17%, right? Doesn't matter the troop types, which is perfect. Provides a reduction in skill damage taken by 17%, and since skills are such a huge factor in this game, that's a huge cut. When squads contain 2 or more troop types, increases squad attack by an additional 10%. So we're already, or by an additional 20%. So we're already getting a 17% attack here. Now we're getting an additional 20%. So that's 37% attack coming from him. Yes, it's when we're containing more than 1 troop type, but that's very easily solved, right? Send 1,000 riders, or just anticipate your team is bad and doesn't know how to garrison properly, and you'll be getting that additional squad attack. And then lastly, we're getting survival of the fittest. When garrisoning, increases squad HP by an additional 20%. Basic attacks have a 20% chance to deal additional damage to the target at an additional 1,920 damage. So we're getting 17% plus an additional 20%. So that's 37% attack, 37% HP, additional damage on those basic attacks, 14,000 punch to the face. Once you have him awakened, you're now dealing 13,750, and if Garrison increases the skill damage by 20%. So increase this by an additional 2,500. So now we're dealing about 17,000 or 16,000 damage, plus additional damage, plus a huge HP factor, plus a huge attack factor. He's used in a ton of places. Now, does he suffer a little bit if you have him in a multi-troop Garrison? Sure, a little bit. You're not going to get that additional attack, but his damage, his capability to be put with everybody. Who would I use him with? Well, just to give you an idea, from what I've seen and talked to, the best infantry Garrison is Riven Victor. The best rider Garrison is Chasey Victor. The best ranged Garrison is Ethan Victor. You see what I'm saying? So like he's kind of key in everywhere, but he's difficult to get. Obviously going to be expensive to level up. I mean, no, not more expensive than any other hero, but because of how, lacking it is to get his actual frags, you have to use legendary frags to level him up. But he is an absolute monster in the Garrison position. So as everyone, I would suggest, if you're going to look to get anyone and you're looking for anybody to fill in your Garrison line, you just don't know, and you have Chasey, but you don't know who to put him with. You have Riven, but you don't know who to put him with. Victor is your obvious choice. Victor can go in a lot of different places. Heck, even Thunder Victor works really well because Thunder's got the heal, Victor brings the damage, and it works really decently, especially when you include Thunder's additional 15% damage buff on his skill coming first. So there's tons of playability with Victor in the field, but that's really what it comes down to, what you need them to do. Now, that is all of the heroes that we've gone through. Maxine, Sarah, Jaden, Martin, Lee, Peter, Hank, Master Jin, Bianca, and Victor. We have finally gone through all of the major ones to talk about. Yes, there are some more elite heroes to talk about. I mean, we could technically do one on the elite heroes, but let's be honest, we don't ever use elite heroes, especially in the later games. Once you start to, I mean, Jaden is still better than Liam, you know what I'm saying? And I say don't use Jaden. So if you're at that point, save all your resources until you start to collect the better heroes, because you will get them. And then once you get them, use all your resources to level them up, and you'll be able to use them at that point, okay? But that is all the advice I have for you here, folks. Thanks very much for tuning in and hanging out this entire time. If you made it all the way through, I have a special gift for you. Nah, I'm just kidding. That just came to my head, but I mean, truth be told, it would have been cool if I did, right? No, but seriously, though, I really do appreciate everybody. Thanks very much for tuning in. If you haven't already, like, comment, and subscribe. Fill out the notification bells. Share the channel with your friends. Love, peace, chicken grease, and until next time, stay lifted.